It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the Box. Another weekend series in the books. It's time to check in on LSU's updated path to the NCAA Tournament. So that is what we will do here today. We will look at a bunch of different scenarios. One that involves the regular season only. One that still involves the SEC Tournament. That is life on the bubble where LSU still squarely sits. The Tigers are back on the field Tuesday night against Northwestern State. So we'll get you a brief preview of the Demons. And there were a couple players over the weekend that I didn't get to go as in depth on that I want to do today. So we'll do that as well. Glad you're along with me. Smash the like button. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app if you have not already. Share the video, share the podcast, all of that. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Of course, you can follow me on social media as well. Happy to have all of you along with me here. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So when you look at this season that LSU has had, and specifically the conference slate, when they went on that skid, the question after every weekend, when LSU was losing their first 5 conference weekends to start play, every weekend the question was asked, hey, can they still get into the NCAA tournament? And every weekend I sat here and I answered yes. Yes, they can. The back half of the schedule lightens up. You're going to have plenty of opportunity. We've talked about that forever. You know, make hay early, back half lightens up. Well, you didn't make hay, so now you got to go and do great on your back half. And then when they started the back half, it was, okay, what's the path for LSU getting into the NCAA tournament? And we've gone through a lot of different scenarios. We've always targeted 13 wins for this team, and we'll revisit that and get into that today. But the issue with that was I didn't think they could get to 13 wins in the Southeastern Conference in the regular season. I threw out the scenario where we went through each series at the back half, and I had them coming out at 11-19, but I said that that's not going to keep them out. And many of you said, how? What do you mean? They're not going to get in with 11 wins in the regular season? No, they wouldn't. But the committee viewed the SEC tournament as conference wins. Get there at 11, go do, win 2 games in Hoover. You'd have a good RPI, you'd be in. That has changed. LSU, with that series win over Texas A&M, has flipped the math back in their favor. Now, it doesn't have to stay in their favor. They have to win. That's the caveat to all of this still. That part of this conversation has not changed. LSU has to keep getting better. They have to keep improving. They have to keep playing well. They have to keep winning. With what they have left, it will all take care of itself if they win. But that was a huge weekend for them against Texas A&M, and it flipped things in their favor. Jay Johnson, you can imagine, was asked about this after that series against Texas A&M. When you win a series against the number 1 team, you're always going to be, and you're fighting on the bubble, you're always going to be asked the question, hey, what did that do to your resume? And here was Jay's answer.
We're in the fight. We have work to do. We're not in the field. We're in the fight. And, I'm really excited about the next 2 weeks. I'm excited to play on Tuesday and get on the road with these guys Wednesday and get moving.
We're not in the field. We're in the fight. He's absolutely right. You haven't locked anything up, but you're closer. And you've given yourself a more manageable path now. Again, you still have to win, but you've given yourself a more manageable path. Before we get into scenarios, let's update where LSU stands. So, you might remember in a previous episode recently, we talked about a projected field of 64 from Baseball America. And we'll go through those all again here soon when they drop their updated versions. But in that projected field, LSU was in the first 4 out. Keep in mind, that was also when they had 7 conference wins. They were in the first 4 out. And along with that, Baseball America had a write-up called Bubble Watch or whatever. And they mentioned in there that LSU, if they could push their RPI into the top 35, get to 13 conference wins, they'd feel good about LSU being in. I sat here and told you I did not believe that LSU could get to 13 conference wins in the regular season. And again, while that's more manageable, while they have a clearer path to that now after beating and upsetting Texas A&M, it's still not a guarantee. But I can see a better path for that now, so I would gladly love to be wrong, actually, in saying that they couldn't get to 13 conference wins in the regular season. But the thing that I did say is I was extremely confident in their ability to push their RPI into the top 35 by the end of the regular season. And, well, mission accomplished for now. LSU, as we sit here recording this, is ranked 34th in the RPI. They did it in one weekend. That was with playing a game against Grambling, who had an RPI ranked in the 270s. But when you go and you beat the number one team in the country and in the RPI twice, you're going to shoot up. LSU went into that Texas A&M series ranked 44th in the RPI. It shot up 10 spots over the course of that weekend. So you're at 34. And when you look at what LSU has left, again, like I've been saying already, 2-3 times in this one episode here, you win, it will all take care of itself. LSU has remaining an opportunity against Alabama on the road, who is ranked 14th in the RPI. That's after they play Northwestern State, who's ranked 173rd, but whatever. And then Ole Miss, who's ranked 25th in the RPI. It's all right there in front of you. You go 4-2 in that stretch in conference play, and LSU's going to have an RPI in the mid to low 20s, ranked in the mid to low 20s. And you'll also be at 13 conference wins, and you'd be, for me, you'd be in. So you might also ask, where do you get these numbers? The 13 conference wins, the 14 conference wins? Great question. So it's just based off of history. I'm sure the majority of you saw the graphic the SEC Network kept putting up there this weekend, right? Or it was ESPN2, whichever. Same company. The at-large SEC teams to reach the NCAA Tournament since 1999. 100% of them at 16-plus wins, as you would expect. 78% at 15 wins. 70% at 14. 38% at 13. 18% at 12. 11 or less wins. There's never been a team. They used 1999 because that is when the format changed to include super regionals. So you also you look at that and you say, all right, well, 38% at 13 wins isn't great. Why would it be any different for LSU this year? I mean, that's well less than half the teams. Correct. Those numbers are used as a benchmark. But what happens in the season dictates change to that, possibly. I feel comfortable about LSU getting in at 13 if they get there in the regular season. And we're about to go through a couple different ways they could do that, but each scenario I feel good about. I really do. And here's why. The strength of the SEC is just different this year. We take it for granted and just call it the best league every year. And it is every year. But y'all, it's stronger this year. We've mentioned this a couple different times, but I'll mention it one more. There are 14 teams in the SEC. You know that. Of those 14 teams, 13 of them, 13 out of the 14, let me be clear, 13 out of the 14 have an RPI ranked in the top 50. Not top 100, top 50. The only one that doesn't is Missouri because they're terrible. Auburn, who has 4 conference wins, is 49th in the RPI. I actually want to come back to that because it'd be great if they win a few games. But that is unheard of. Where almost the entire league is inside of the top 50 in the RPI. 4 out of the top 5 teams in the RPI are in the Southeastern Conference, including the top 3. So when you look at a league that strong, and you would look at LSU's resume down the back end with all those quad one opportunities, including a win over the number one team, yet 13 wins they'd be in. So how do they get to 13? There's a couple different ways. The easiest way is go 4-2. That's the easiest way. If LSU went 4-2, they took 2 out of 3 on the road at Alabama. That'd be a quad one series win, by the way. And then you come home and you take 2 out of 3 from Ole Miss, which would be no worse than a quad 2 series win. You'd be at 13 conference wins, and you would be in. I feel very confident without anything that happened in Hoover. I think you would be in. Now, let's say you lose the series at Alabama. Take at least one. You would have to sweep Ole Miss to get to 14 conference wins. So you could go 1-2 and then sweep Ole Miss. And that would also get you there. I think at that point, you might need a game in Hoover, but I'm still willing to say, even doing that, I think you get in at 13 conference wins. The real interesting thing is LSU has cracked the door open on a path to get to 14. And that would involve taking 2 out of 3 on the road at Alabama and then sweeping Ole Miss. And or sweeping Alabama or taking 2 out of 3 at Ole Miss. But I think, obviously, we all think the more likely scenario there would be taking 2 out of 3 on the road at Alabama and sweeping Ole Miss. And if you do that and you get to 14 and 16, there is no question in my mind that you are in. 100% you're in. What did we say on the graphic? Teams that win 16 games, 14 games, 70%. Like, it's a virtual lock at that point. The one thing you cannot do is get swept. If LSU gets swept at Alabama, that brings the SEC tournament back into play. LSU would need to at least take 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss, and then they would really have to go on a run in Hoover. Because you're sitting at 9, and you get swept at Bama, that'd leave you at 11, again, right where we had them. If you take 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss, you need to at least win 2 games in Hoover. So it's the same thing we've been talking about in that vein where you can't get swept. You have to win at least 1 from here on, at least 1 against Alabama. And that'll be really interesting. And y'all, I'll be honest. I think LSU can get Alabama coming up. I do. For a couple reasons. The one caveat, Alabama has been really, really good at home this year. They've lost 1 conference weekend at home. That was against Texas A&M. They've won the rest of them. They beat Arkansas at home. They beat Tennessee at home. Like, they've beat really good teams at home. But Alabama as a team right now is hitting the skids a little bit. They're 5-5 in their last 10 overall, and they've lost 2 out of their last 3 conference weekends. Their offense is struggling, and their pitching has never really been good this year. You're catching them at the right time. And at worst, that's going to be a quad 1 series because of where it takes place, because it takes place on the road. And LSU's playing better. We've talked plenty about that. And the reason I feel great about it, and I alluded to this a couple shows ago as well, it's LSU's pitching that changed my tune when looking at this Alabama weekend. Pitching can travel. You're pitching really well. You bring that along in Tuscaloosa, yeah, you're going to be in every game. You're going to have a chance to win. Now, you're going to need to get some timely hitting. But like I said, the pitching staff for Alabama, it just hasn't been very good. So the opportunity will be there. It's going to really come down to your pitching. And pitching can travel a lot easier, I believe, than offense can travel in baseball. So that's why I feel good about that. And if you do that, and then you, at worst, win a series against Ole Miss at home, you're at 13 and you're in. The other thing to kind of keep an eye on is the SEC tournament. LSU right now would be in the SEC tournament if it started today. They'd be the 12 seed, but they would be in virtue of, at this point, a tiebreaker with Ole Miss because of better overall record. You will eventually play Ole Miss, and the Rebels this week have Texas A&M at home. That's not going to go well for Ole Miss. Their pitching staff's been dreadful, and A&M's lineup is not, and that's a small ballpark in Oxford. And I think A&M is going to do really well in that series. LSU could take a large step to locking up their spot in Hoover this weekend if they win 2 out of 3 against Alabama and things go the way we think they will in Oxford against Texas A&M. If not, it'll come down to that final weekend when you get to play Ole Miss. Like we said, you control your destiny with that. That's just, like, I will leave it at that. You control your destiny in making it to Hoover. But again, right now, if it started today, LSU would be the 12th and final team into Hoover. They would play the 5 seed in the tournament, which I believe, would be Mississippi State right now. So you get a rematch against that club. But that's where you stand there. So for LSU, 4-2. Go 4-2. You have a couple different ways you could get there, and you're in. Like, I think you're in. Because of the strength of this league, your RPI will be fine, and I think you're in. So it's massive, y'all. Massive that they've been able to turn it around the way that they did. And by turning it around, I mean the math. They still have work to do. Like we said, you can't get swept, and you have to keep winning. But they've cleared the math up. The math is mathing. A lot easier now than it was, 5 days ago? So, good on them. They're playing really well right now, and it's exciting to see. All right. That's a lot. I know that's a lot of information. I know that's a lot of numbers. Hopefully it all made sense. If not, we're going to touch on it plenty, obviously, throughout the rest of the week, so keep it locked and loaded here at Musso at the Box. There's a couple guys I want to touch on, and then we'll get you a brief preview on Northwestern State, and we'll get out of here. The 2 guys that I want to touch on from this past weekend that I didn't get to go as in-depth on that I wanted to when we did the full weekend recap, one of them is Stephen Milam, and the other one is Alex Milazzo. So a freshman and a veteran, because they were just both massive for LSU against Texas A&M, and in Milazzo's case, and Milam's case, really down the stretch here, they've been huge. Let's start with Monster, because he was named SEC Freshman of the Week for the first time in his career after that Texas A&M series, and deservedly so. He had a whale of a weekend. He hit .444 versus the best team in the country per the rankings this past weekend. 4 for 9, 2 doubles, an RBI, 2 runs, 2 walks. He had a on-base percentage of .545. He was awesome. As great as those numbers are, though, you look at the spots, right? Look at the spots that some of those hits came. Friday night, he has the big single to cap off that big 6th inning that gave LSU the lead. That made it 6-3. He had the single with 2 strikes, which is locked in. He had a great sliding catch late in the ball game as well. Like, he was fantastic defensively to go along with the average. But this was encouraging to me for Milam, because you might remember going into the Auburn series, we talked about him, and it looked like he was kind of really starting to figure it out. He got off to a slow start in conference play, which is to be expected for a freshman stepping into this league. But heading into that Auburn series, he had at least 1 hit in 11 of his last 12 ball games. And then he had a really rough weekend against Auburn. And we kind of sat here and we were like, oh, all right, well, man, was it just us kind of being fooled that he might have been figuring it out? And then he bounces back the way he did here? No, he just had a bad weekend against Auburn. It is starting to come to him a little bit more, and that is extremely encouraging, because, y'all, look, Stephen Milam, he's had a great season for a freshman in this league. He's hitting .299. He's played in 46 of the 46 of the 49 games that LSU has played already this season, so he's gotten plenty of experience. And he's hitting right below 200. Like, he's got an on-base right below 400. He's been very good. He's been very consistent. But this back stretch for him, especially that series against Texas A&M, it's been massive for his development. And when you look up next season and Milam's hitting, probably 320, 330, You're going to point to the back end of this when he really, really grew up. It's a luxury to be able to have somebody to come in and play, as a freshman and be able to play every day. And he's done that. And it's been an incredible journey for him so far to get to this point. We've talked about it, the struggles he had in the fall to the last, 3 weeks of preseason camp when he really started to get moving, and it earned him a spot earlier than I think many thought coming out of the fall. And credit to him, he has put a death grip on it, and, it's been really difficult to take him out of the lineup. And weekends like he just had against Texas A&M are a reason why. That's just, you want to look for a payoff in development. A weekend like Stephen Milam just had is that. And now he just continues to go. I'd love to see him follow it up with a big weekend at Alabama, and that's the next task. But right now, down the back half of this season, it certainly looks like the Auburn weekend was an outlier. Instead of him coming back down to earth, it looks just like it was, rough weekend. 444 for Milam. He was LSU's leading hitter on the entire team over the course of that weekend against the number one team in the country. Major hat tip, a major congratulations on the SEC Freshman of the Week, and excited to see more from him. And then there's Alex Milazzo. So from a true freshman, and I just exited out of my Milazzo notes, darn it. From a true freshman to a guy in his final year of eligibility that is, had one of the more intriguing journeys at LSU. And he has just come through with huge hits at the back half of this season, particularly the last 2 weekends. And, man, that is such an awesome payoff to see from him because the bat was always the question mark with Alex Milazzo. From the moment he stepped foot on campus, that was it. And he struggled a lot. As a freshman and a sophomore. There was one year where he didn't even hit 200. And he was one of the first guys we highlighted when Jay Johnson took the job as somebody that could really benefit from the offensive teachings of a coach as successful as Jay Johnson when it comes to that part of the game. And you saw it kind of immediately. In Jay's first year, Milazzo got off to a hotter start, but then he got hurt. And last year, he hits a tick below 300, came up with some really clutch hits. And then this year, Alex Milazzo for the season is hitting 274, which isn't going to blow anybody away. But like we said, when the kid hit below 200 for a season in his career, that's a major step up. A major step up. But what's even more is the veteran presence that he's providing in the lineup and coming up with the big hit. Like to watch him come up with the clutch hit after, it really shows you the development, really shows you the change in approach for him at the plate. The 2 RBI double against Auburn on Friday night, that's one example. Obviously, the single that he had, the 2 RBI single that he had Saturday night against Texas A&M that extended the lead. He was the guy who scored on the wild pitch Saturday night against A&M to give LSU the lead. He just impacted the game so much the last 2 weekends. And it's been awesome to see. In Alex Milazzo's last 5 games, he has 5 hits. And he's done a great job handling the pitching staff. There was a great video of him after the game on Saturday where he's talking with the pitchers, and you can hear him talking, and Christian says, I'm so proud of you. Like, the journey he's come, that's a guy who's been on his own. This is a year where leadership was called out by the head coach. To see a guy like Alex Milazzo be able to come up with those clutch hits, handle the pitching staff the way that he has, that's awesome when it comes to leadership. So, just a major hat tip to Milam, a major hat tip to Milazzo. They have been huge parts of LSU's success down the back half of this season, but especially in that series win against Texas A&M. So, major congratulations, major bouquets, major flowers to those guys. And the other thing I'll say about Milazzo, he seems to have really kind of stabilized that catching position right now. They're going to give him days off, and you'll see Brady Neal when they do, but when LSU feels like they need to go win a game, Alex Milazzo is going to catch. And that's important. Like, that is important going forward for this team. We've talked so much about certain positions needing to be stabilized. Larson did it in the outfield, and now Milazzo has done it at catcher. When there's a game that LSU has to go win, both those guys are going to be in the lineup, along with Pearson, White, Jones, Braswell, Milam. We'll see what they do in center field. But when it comes down to it, they're going to put Kling in there late for defense. I think that has been made abundantly clear. They did it twice this past weekend against Texas A&M. So that's a huge positive as well, is you feel like you have a lineup established now when it comes time to, hey, this is a game that they got to win. And that's the line they're going to go with. So all of that is great. Great news. All right, a quick thought on LSU versus Northwestern State. Tigers are 31-18. The Demons come in at 19-28. They are not a great baseball team. LSU leads the series with Northwestern State 61-13 overall. They've won 23 of the 26 matchups, including the 14-4 victory last year. For LSU on the mound, I would imagine it's going to be Cade Anderson getting the start. They'll have a group of pitchers that they want to see and a group of pitchers that they will use. Pardon me. But I would imagine Anderson gets the start. If it's not Anderson, I would think it'd be Javen Coleman. But given Anderson, it didn't pitch at all this weekend. Normally when that's happened, he has started the Tuesday game, so I'll go with him. Maybe they're looking at something else matchup-wise, and they don't, but that's my educated guess, is that it will be Cade Anderson. I would imagine Jay would want to get Thatcher Hurd and Justin Lure back out there on the mound, considering the rough outing they had on Sunday against Auburn. It might not be for much. It's a bit of a quick turnaround, but I would think you'd want to get them back out there at least, kind of shake it off. And I think you should. And I'd love to see Jaden Newt. Thought we'd see him last week when LSU played Grambling. He had sprained an ankle, Jay said after the game. That's why you didn't see him. Hopefully he's feeling better and you can get him back out there. So that's obviously something I would love to see as well. I think you're going to end up seeing some guys that maybe you haven't seen as much, just given the workload that Sam Dutton had Sunday and kind of the workload that Hurd and Lure, although I think you could see them a little bit. But maybe this opens the door for you to see more Cade Woods this go-round. Maybe this opens the door for more DJ Primo this go-round. And, of course, Coleman, and like I said, I think Anderson starts. So that's great. For LSU, man, keep going in the right direction offensively. I don't think it shouldn't be too much of an issue for LSU to score in this game. Northwestern State is a team ERA about 6.5. Like, the offense the opportunity is going to come offensively for Northwestern State. They're hitting 255 as a club. They're not an overpowering team. Just to 41 homers. They do have 73 doubles, which is really good. A couple guys to look out for. Second baseman Balin Valentine. He leads the Demons with homers 71 and 71. He leads the Demons with homers with 9. Let's try that again. Outfielder / second baseman Balin Valentine leads the Northwestern State Demons in homers with 9 and a second on the club in RBI with 40. Rocco Gump leads the Demons with 41 RBI. All right, we got that out there. And then Reese Limpoma is the team-high batter at 309 and leads with doubles with 12, and he has scored 47 times. So keeping him off base is the key to stopping their offense for sure. So, look, oddly enough, this is Northwestern State's second trip to Baton Rouge this season. They just didn't play LSU. They were part of that round-robin tournament when Northern Illinois and Stony Brook were in. They played Stony Brook and Northern Illinois. They just didn't play LSU, so LSU will play them now. Look, I expect LSU to beat Northwestern State and probably do it pretty handily. It's baseball. Anything can happen, but they aren't a good team. They just aren't. They don't hit well, and they don't pitch well. LSU's playing some of their best baseball. This is a game that they should handle. And if they do that, LSU will finish 23-3 in the regular season. This game will not help you at all, really, when it comes to RPI, but it could hurt you. We told you Northwestern State's RPI is 173rd. LSU needs to go out and win the game from that perspective. That being said, if LSU loses this game and they go take 2 out of 3 from Alabama and take 2 out of 3 from Ole Miss, they're still going to make the NCAA tournament, because those are both quad 1 opportunities at the current moment, and Ole Miss will be no worse than a quad 2, and that's going to shoot your RPI right back up. And then you'll still have the SEC tournament. So it's not going to kill you. It just wouldn't be in your best interest to go and lose this game. And again, I don't think that LSU will. So give me the Tigers against the Demons. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Y'all smash the like button on your way out. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app. Share all of those things. Greatly, greatly appreciated. And be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.